Warning. Tongue and Geek contains heavy spoilers. If you haven't read, watched, or played the content being reviewed this episode, know that we will definitely spoil major plot points. Also, this show isn't for kids. We use words like and and it would take too much time and effort to edit them all out. Please don't tell our moms. Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome to Tongue in Geek, where two more white guys on the internet share their unsolicited opinions on all things geeky. I'm Isaac.
I'm Tyler.
And today marks the 1-year anniversary of Tongue and Geek's premiere episode. To celebrate, we're doing something a bit different. It'll either last 10 minutes or 10 hours. It's going to be a bit of a retrospective on the podcast itself, looking back on the past year and discussing maybe whether our opinions have changed on any of the topics we've covered, as well as sort of general feelings on the podcast and how it's come along. Tyler, maybe we should just start with some general feelings of like how it all began. And
it feels like a very, very premature flex on our part to do a retrospective because we have an audience of like 4.
Yes.
This feels like really, really egocentric.
We're cataloging it. We're cataloging it for posterity.
I mean, we kind of just decided one day to, hey, let's do a podcast. And I don't think it was any deeper than that, unless you can provide more insight.
I think you had done an episode of a podcast with T2, actually, hadn't you? You had joined him for something?
Back in the day, before times, which means everybody knows what the before times were, T2 and I did do one episode of a podcast where we talked about music, and we wanted it to be like a thing, and like the first episode went really well, but for some reason we just never did another one. So
I remember you mentioning that, and then like it just sort of came like me and you talked about, hey, we should like do that too, because all we ever do is sit around and talk about this kind of shit. Might as well throw it out on the internet for people to listen to. And we just kind of talked about it back and forth until one day I think I was like, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah, and that's when it was born. We sat down one night to talk about Godzilla vs. Kong, which was our first episode, maybe a week or two after we watched it together. I recorded off of a headset mic. And we were recording through Discord. I don't know what you still record through Discord.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You do.
I do. Yeah. I will. You record your own audio now, thankfully, but there are times when, for one reason or another, that audio comes out hot garbage, and I have to use the Discord audio anyway, and we go back sounding like episode 4 or so. But we've come a bit of a way with audio. We still have a bit of a way to go.
Yes, and I, as a movie buff, I know that sound is important because if you watch a movie and the visuals look good and everything, and like the story, you like the story and everything, but the sound is shitty, then the whole experience is ruined. So like I've always understood that audio is incredibly important. But when it comes to a podcast, I'm like, if like it doesn't sound like you're recording in a tin can, like who cares? But then over the year of doing this and listening back to the majority of our episodes when I didn't have a decent mic, I'm like, good God, like, no wonder people are audiophiles and like snobs about audio, because this sounds like trash.
When it's an audio-only medium, okay, I've always had a good mic. My problem's never been the mic itself being low quality on my end. My problem is that my mic picked up everything because I always had the Blue Yeti, and I didn't know enough about audio editing at the time to know how to set up like audio gates and noise gates that would like cut off things below a certain decibel level. So many of our early episodes just have this low ringing hum of my mic picking up like the computer like hum throughout the whole damn thing, and it's so obnoxious.
Yeah, we both have decent mics now, and you're better at editing and we're using somewhat more professional software, but like we don't have a studio. We don't have like any like sound equipment or anything like that other than our decent mics. So we still have a long way to go.
We're still just two schmucks on the internet doing this more for fun and just to hang out than for any sort of internet fame.
Yeah, I'm still in my living room, just in the open air where the mic can pick up every creak of the chair and every rustle of the earphones against my shirt that I'm wearing.
Every jingle jangle of your dogs and cats' collars. Good fucking God. I hear every time they move, and I have to try my best to cut some of it out, but fucking don't move, you animals. Don't move for 2 hours.
I mean, when we get that Bezos money, we can get a studio, we can lock all the animals out, we can put up that soundproofing foam or whatever the fuck it's called, and just to have a professional podcast. But we have to settle for 15% professional as far as production is concerned.
15 or 0.15?
I don't think it's the worst sounding thing out there.
We've come a long way. It sounds much better than our earlier episodes. Still some stuff I'd like for us to work on, but now it's listenable. I don't want to stab myself in the ear when I listen to an episode now.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue about listenability, because for the longest time, and most people I think can relate to this, listening to myself on an audio recording made me just become a black hole of cringe. I could not stand listening to myself. I don't care what I was talking about. Hearing myself recorded back to me, But over the course of doing this, I have learned to be okay with listening to myself recorded. I can actually sit down and listen to one of our episodes uninterrupted without being like, good God, Tyler, you sound like an idiot. You're disgusting. How can anybody tolerate the sound of your voice? So this has helped me boost my confidence a little bit, I guess.
Good. I think confidence is something that we've both gained a lot more of. In terms of listening to my own voice back where I do all the editing, I got over that pretty quick. In fact, I've almost come to gain a sort of comfort into not just listening to my voice, but to all of our voices in this, because I've picked up on so much of our speaking patterns and inflections now that there's just like a subconscious comfort in like, oh, Tyler's making a good point in here, and oh, I can just feel the way his brain's functioning right now because I'm like following his voice patterns right now, and oh, I can see where I'm sort of spinning my wheels here, and like I've picked up a lot more of how we talk to each other in our regular conversations by actually listening back and editing our podcast, because I spend so much time just listening to our voices, and that's created like a very interesting sort of way for me to I'm here. Speaking of, I'm having one of those brain fart moments. This is, but it's really changed the way that I sort of listen to us, because this is one of the issues that we have still. I tend to talk really fast, and I tend to talk really a lot, and I will kind of steamroll the conversation if nobody stops me. But from the first episode to now, I've gotten a lot better about being like, okay, Isaac, shut the fuck up. Let somebody else talk. Somebody else wants to get a word in edgewise. Other people have good points to make.
And it's funny that you had that self-discovery, because I had the self-discovery of, my God, you say like a lot.
Yeah.
And listening back to myself, like, even though I'm more confident in listening to myself, I'm like, my God, you say like every other word sometimes, and it's obnoxious. How did you not notice this before? And I think it's because I am not the greatest at sustaining like a decent clip in conversation, because sometimes I'm not the best at communicating verbally. Mm-hmm. I'm a lot better with the written word. That sounds pretentious as shit, but I can express my opinions better when I'm writing them down than just off the cuff, talking about them. So I'll want to make a good point, what I feel is a strong point, but then when it comes out of my mouth, it just sounds infinitely dumber than what it sounded like in my head. So I've been trying to be cognizant of how I'm speaking as I'm speaking, but that takes so much brain power, it almost short circuits my brain. So like I kind of just have to go with the flow and talk how I talk and not worry about sounding perfect for the microphone.
Yeah.
Which has been a struggle, and I'm still working on it. But hey, it's been a year, and we've been doing it for a year. And
we've both made progress. So. You're very much, like you said, you're very much sort of, you take your time and try and like figure out what you're saying as you're saying it. I'm the exact opposite. I figure out what I'm saying as I'm going. like I will walk myself to the thought that I'm having as I'm speaking. So having to edit those very different sort of speech patterns on top of like guests like Erica and T2, like it's been really interesting to sort of learn how we talk to each other and how that sort of impacts our conversation dynamics. But yeah, I'm really proud of how far we've come with not just the audio stuff that we've been working on, but with our conversation skills in this, and also just our entertainment skills. Because like early on in some of the episodes, we'd have some good points that we'd make, but there was certainly this sort of, we didn't know what we needed to do to be entertaining. And I feel like some of our more recent episodes have been a lot more entertaining. We've really found a balance of going between and making some good salient points and doing some sillier bits and sketches, and sometimes even getting a little like debating between each other and knowing just how hard to push each other on those debates too. Because like there are moments where, you know, we might get pretty heated or we're on pretty strong opposite ends, but I feel like we never reach a point where it becomes totally uncomfortable in our conversations now. Yeah,
that's a good point. Because at first, our first episode, Godzilla vs. Kong, I still think that's a decent episode because it was our first episode and like we were excited to do it, and it was just kind of us geeking out for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that one's fun to look back on. But as we moved on from that one, we tried to take the format of the podcast seriously. So we kind of just wanted to stick to certain points.
Yeah.
And like make sure like we kept it contained, and like that kind of digs into the entertainment value of it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And we've just gotten more comfortable with the rapport basically, and allowed our senses of humor to come out a little bit more and just become more conversational.
Yeah, a big part of the early problems in terms of formatting was largely on me, because I do a lot of note preps and stuff before we start, and I would get a little too hung up on the preparation I made. Like, I'd want to do a full plot recap. In more recent episodes, we've started moving away from that and into more of a general synopsis, and then bouncing around the story instead of like actually going start to finish everything that happens. Which helps a lot. Because most of what we talk about, if somebody's going to stumble upon this pod and want to listen to an episode, 99.9% of the time, they're going to have seen or heard or read whatever the hell it is we're talking about. So they don't need 20-30% of the podcast being a blow-by-blow of the story. Yeah, and we have the spoiler warning at the beginning. We tell everybody, like every episode, we're going to spoil everything we talk about.
Mm-hmm. And if you're listening to a long-form podcast about something, like, there's going to be spoilers. So
we talk for 2 hours about most of these things. We talk for longer than some of these things are. Like people could just sit like our Space Jam 2 one. I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but I think it might be longer than the actual film.
Quite possibly, because I didn't realize we'd get so mired in the discourse on that one. That was one of the more breezy ones. We'll knock this one out. But then, like, as we kept talking, like, I was like, wait a second. And I didn't like this about the movie. And I didn't like this about the movie. And I didn't like this about the movie. And you're like, no, it's fine. It's good. You're just a bummer.
Oh, boy. How long was Space Jam 2? Space Jam 2's episode was 1 hour and 37 minutes. Yeah, I think that's longer than the actual film.
Yeah. Either as long or maybe a little longer than the actual movie. Yeah.
That's crazy.
With credits.
That's crazy.
Instead of like personal boring shit like, oh, this is how we've grown as people through the podcast. Is there anything about the content itself that we want to touch on first?
Yeah. Any episodes that you want to talk about, like looking back on, that you feel, you know, maybe you didn't make a point you wanted to make, or maybe your opinions changed on something?
There isn't one where I think my opinion changed, not yet at least, but I'm still impressed with our Superman Smashes the Klan episode.
Yeah.
For being such an early episode, there was something in the water that day because like we both loved the comic and like we were just like firing on all cylinders as far as like good points, explained well, and just like the substance of it.
The real,
really, really
some
good.
heavy thematic analysis in that one. We did really well on. I really enjoy that one too. I think it's funny to look back on the WandaVision and how we were both praising it so much for like, man, Marvel's sort of taking some new risks and moving in a new direction with stuff. And then like a couple months later, we were immediately like, fuck. Like we're kind of tired of Marvel again.
Yeah, we've talked about, even when we're not talking about Marvel, like we end up talking about Marvel because it's still the biggest thing in pop culture at the moment.
Yeah.
And
it kind of colors everything else around it too. Like we can't talk about any other superhero property without like making a comparison to Marvel, and even non-superhero properties. Like the comparison just ends up showing up at some point.
I know, because it's the template now, and like that's one of the, oh god, here we go, Marvel tangent.
It wouldn't be a Tongue and Geek episode without one. I mean, we're gonna bring up Ragnarok too, I'm sure.
Yes, and again, like, and I hate the fact that we have to disclaim this, but like the Marvel fan base, some of them, not all of them, but there is a contingent that's just like, you cannot say a bad word about Marvel. You just can't do it. But there's this idea that this huge franchise that's like the biggest thing in the world, has been the biggest thing for like 15 years in cinema and now television, doesn't influence, people's perceptions and opinions on this kind of content. And I'm like, how can something so popular and so ubiquitous in the pop culture not influence people's perceptions and opinions about this kind of stuff? Like, that's just how that works.
Yeah.
So when you compare it to something that's not Marvel, or like somebody says, oh, this just kind of felt like it was trying to do the Marvel thing, and people want to be like, oh, not everything's like Marvel, like, and it's just like, no, come on. And here I am not knowing how to make my point like I was just talking about. I wish the Marvel discourse was more even keeled than it is for something so popular.
It's
but
hard.
That's just the way the internet works. Nothing is even keeled in discourse. And I don't hate Marvel. I don't hate Marvel at all.
No.
I love Marvel. I'm just, it's for me now, right now, it's a case by case basis. Like, I just love Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness. Thought it was great.
Yeah.
Love No Way Home. Thought it was great.
Yeah, for sure. God, the
But
No Way
it's
Home
still
episode! The lost episode!
We lost the episode!
We lost No Way Home. That was technically year 2, but we recorded an episode for No Way Home, and it was phenomenal. It was so good. And Tyler's audio was hot fucking trash. It was the first time that I had him record his audio on his own, and I did not record it through Discord. I should have recorded yours through Discord. I learned that lesson. But, like, oh my god, we lost all of your audio and it was unsalvageable. It's like, fuck me, that was such a good episode. We had so many good points, and it was such like a... We were both so invested in that film, and oh god.
Yeah, well, let's condense it. We both really loved No Way Home.
Yeah, it was
so
very good. Top
there's
tier,
our review. There's our episode.
Top tier, perhaps the best MCU film, perhaps the best Marvel film, period, on par with Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. It probably ranks in my top 10 somewhere. I hate making lists. I've tried to make a favorite films list my entire life. I've tried to make a top 100 favorite movies list, and I can never do it. Like, aside from Jaws and Gremlins, like, I cannot do it.
You are so bad at lists. I still remember when you posted like a top 10 favorite superheroes list, and your number 3 was the X-Men, and I'm like, Tyler, that's not a superhero. That's like 3 dozen superheroes or more.
more than 3 dozen.
And you were like, shut up, it's my list, I'll do what I want. I'm like, okay, I like the DC universe. That's my favorite superhero.
Well, I figured I could cheat on that because I love so many X-Men.
That's not...
So, making a list of your favorite superheroes and like having the X-Men on there is like, that's a thing in and of itself.
Then
because
make
the
a
X-Men
separate one for
universe.
just the X-Men then.
But I want the X-Men on the top superhero list because they're some of my favorites.
All of the X-Men outclass every other...
Okay, the X-Men as a concept and a title, does that float your boat? Does that count? Is that acceptable?
Really doesn't. Put it in your favorite like superhero like concepts or superhero titles or something. Not all those superheroes. You can't tell me you're putting fucking Jubilee over like I don't know.
I
Thing
like
or
Jubilee. Oh, God damn it. Anyway, my point was about not being able to make a top 100 favorite movies list. Is my philosophy now is pretty much any movie that I love is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
So no need to make an arbitrary list because who gives a shit, basically.
I'm just also so much somebody who's sort of in the now. Like, I can look back on stuff from my past in my childhood, and I'll go back and rewatch some things and still, like, feel very strongly fondly towards them. But it's really, like, my favorite thing is whatever I'm into at the moment. It really isn't like I go back and say, oh, man, this is my favorite ever. This is my favorite ever. I kind of, like... this thing that I just saw is really cool, so I'm going to obsess over that for a few weeks, and then something else will come along, and I'll obsess over that for a few weeks. And, the old things still stick in my mind. I still appreciate them and love them, but it's not like it's going to stay there unless it does something really, really fantastic that just clings into my soul.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we all experience art differently, and that's the beauty about talking about it.
I also just have there's so much to take in that the idea of going back almost becomes daunting. I want to revisit this series and it's like, wait, I have so many other things that I should be looking at because they look exactly up my alley and I don't have time to redo all this. It's so bad that we live in an oversaturated age of like, I have too much good media to consume. That's such a first world problem of like, oh man, I have too much good media to consume. How will I find the time to enjoy it all? How will I find the time to indulge in my hedonistic pleasures and watch my stories?
It's true though, because there's so much out there now. We're so inundated with it that sometimes it's hard for me to enjoy it as much as I used to because, and a lot of that has to do with mental health reasons that I won't get into, but because of the streaming age and so much new stuff between movies and television and everything just like constantly coming out between so many different platforms, you could spend an entire evening surfing for something to watch and never actually watch anything because it's so overwhelming and you can't decide, okay, I'm just going to watch this. Yeah. So there have been many a night where I completely intend to, you know what, I'm going to get off work, I'm going to go watch a movie / start a show. And then like I'll get off, have some dinner, sit down to do it, and then I'm just clicking through a bunch of stuff, and then the desire is gone, and I end up just like watching something I've seen a million times or occupying myself with like a comic book or a book or something instead of watching something.
There's certainly been plenty of things on our list that we've been prepping for that's happened with.
Yes, very true. But you're not supposed to call that out.
Oh boy. No, I totally get it. And that's why I've really tried to avoid us becoming one of those series that's so a podcast that's so focused on keeping up with things as they release. Like, there's a few things that we've come close to, like within a few weeks or so, but I really don't want us to become like, we have to keep up with the latest new big thing. Maybe for
to our detriment, because that's how you find, a solid audience.
Right, I know. But like, that's not what we're not doing this podcast to build an audience. We didn't start this podcast to build an audience. We started this podcast because we wanted a way to spend time together that we both felt would like feel good in a way that we're sort of producing something, but at the same time, we're just hanging out. Meeting both this sense of like creative fulfillment and just social fulfillment. Like, that's what this podcast has always been, and it may never get a huge following. It probably won't. There's bajillions of podcasts out there.
Yeah.
But
a bajillions of podcasts just about pop culture.
Exactly. So. But, like, what we have here is something fun that we both enjoy doing, and it's, it's a fun way for us to just hang out and sort of frame our hangouts in a way that we can both feel like, yeah, we did something today.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm honestly kind of surprised that we've been able to stick with it for a year so far.
Hell yeah.
Not that I was like hoping that it would go away or being negative about it, but I'm like, we'll do this, for a bit and then it'll probably just die out. But we just kept doing it.
Yeah, 30 episodes. This will be 31.
Yeah, and we still have a couple in the can that haven't come out yet.
We've got one left in the can. We got the...
just one?
Yeah, we've gone through most of our older stuff. Superman for All Seasons, that will release probably sometime in September, if I'm looking at the schedule correctly. We've got that one on the back burner. But yeah, we've done a lot. Yeah. 30 episodes.
For two amateurs that, live an hour and a half away, who both have their own lives and schedules. That's a pretty good commitment.
I had no idea that this would be such a nightmare to just sit down and talk to each other for 2 hours, once every 2 weeks. Like,
such is life as an adult.
Adulthood fucking sucks. I miss the days where I would be at your house every fucking night and we'd get like a $5 thick crust Little Caesars pizza and just destroy ourselves every night. That's all we did.
Man,
like
you don't know how good
years.
You have it. You don't know how good you have it until it's gone.
And then you'd show me a movie that you love, and I'd probably fall asleep halfway through it because I just ate an entire deep dish Chicago-style pizza to myself, and I needed to lose consciousness.
That's another thing, is learning each other's tastes more. Because the first couple years of our friendship, I knew what you liked, but I didn't quite know to like what extent that what you didn't like. So there'd be times early on where I'd like show you like a horror movie and like you had said, I'm not really into horror, but like I didn't understand quite how not into horror you were.
Yeah.
So there were times when like I showed you something, you'd just be like, okay.
I don't know if we've ever told this story on the pod of how we became friends, but the first time I met you, I was hanging out with a different friend from college that I had, and this guy was like super into the movie X3. He was like, man, it's such an underrated film. It's so good. I freaking love X3. People just don't get it. And then like he walked away to do something else for a while, and it was just me and you at the table. And I just looked at you across the table. I'm like, I'm sorry for his trash opinions on X3. And like that was how our friendship started.
Yeah, that's the beauty of friendships. They just kind of start out of nowhere.
They just
in the
happen.
most innocuous of ways.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we've always had like, I think that's why we also focus so much on like superhero properties, because we both have like a deep love of superheroes. Like that's the one thing we can both agree on is like superheroes fucking rock.
Yep. And animation to an extent. I love animation, but you're far more into it than I am.
Oh, I love animation, just of all kinds.
So we can agree on most animated movies and stuff like that. But when it branches out of superheroes and animation, that's when the opinions mostly diverge.
Yeah. For good measure, it's good though, because I like us having a little controversy in these. I've really enjoyed debating with you, because over the years, we've developed the perfect level of, we can get antagonistic with each other without genuinely hurting each other's feelings.
Yeah. Although there's a little bit of butthurt occasionally here. A little
bit with the Batman stuff. I know I hurt your feelings a bit with that, because like he loves Batman, and I'm about to break his damn heart when I tell him I don't like this stuff with Batman.
Oh, god damn it!
Oh boy!
But I want to keep talking about horror though, because when you first said, yeah, it's not really a genre I like, it's not my thing, I just took that at face value. Like, a lot of people aren't into horror like that. I've had those conversations a million times. But I didn't know like the kind of visceral reaction you have to so much of it.
I have such
like either you crack on it and laugh at it to cope,
yeah,
or it deeply upsets you and you don't enjoy yourself.
No, I've got very strong fear reactions, and it usually puts me into I want to run away and or fight everything in this room. And you seem to enjoy putting me in that state of mind.
I do. And I did not expect your reaction to The Fly to be so strong.
One of our best episodes is The Fly, and I fucking hate that it is, because it's going to set a precedent of, man, Tyler's just going to have to pick one or more really grotesque films per Halloween to show Isaac so that we can have one episode out of him per year.
Yep, just one episode where he is just completely just disheveled,
miserable,
and upset. And it still tickles me because, yes, by any metric, a film like The Fly is gross. It is disturbing and upsetting. But because I've been in that world so long, I take for granted somebody who's not in that world and doesn't know what to expect can have such a reaction to it. It just takes me aback, because I'm like, this is a mainstream movie. Like, it's critically acclaimed and it was a box office success. Like, how can somebody have such a strong, negative reaction to it? I'm just like, well, I guess it's just me then. It's not everybody eats this stuff up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
No, I do not. I'll tell you too, with The Fly in particular, and with horror in particular, I've noticed a lot of the stuff that I've enjoyed in recent years, and maybe this is partially your influence, and maybe it's not.
Hell yeah, I'll take credit.
Has elements of horror in it, if not being full-blown horror. Like the Immortal Hulk run. That's a full-blown, body horror, cosmic horror. It's a horror series. And I find that I am much more comfortable with horror when it's put into art or animation. No. When it's put into other genres as part of it, but when it's put in art or animation, then my brain gets caught up in the whole grotesque beauty of what the artist has created, of the drawings themselves or the models or whatever. But whenever it's in practical effects, whenever we have practical effects showing it, I just get skeezed out, because even though there's still a level of artistry going on in creating this, I don't have that same level of disconnect that I have with animation or art or whatever, where I can be like, oh man, look how incredibly detailed this artwork and stuff is. It's so cool and beautiful and everything. But with the practical effects, it just gets at me, because ew, this is happening. It's real. It's gross. I don't like it.
Which is funny, because we've watched hella violent stuff before.
Yeah.
That's not technically horror, but still with insane, graphic violence, mostly in animation and stuff like that. But there's still a different context to it when it's horror. Mm-hmm. And when you'd be reacting to something gross in a horror movie and be like, but we just watched this thing and that has crazy violence in it and he was fine with it. But it's all about the context.
It really is.
It's all about the tone.
Yeah. Because I can watch super violent stuff like Invincible, the scene in Invincible. I guess spoilers for Invincible. The train scene where his dad freaking shoves him through a whole train of people and they all just explode into guts as they go through. That scene's dark as hell and it's really violent. But I don't get the same sort of gut feeling as I do with horror, because I'm not in the same mindset of oh my gosh, something's out to get me, or something is coming for me. Some the actual I'm in danger fear reaction. It's more oh my, I can't believe this is happening. It's yeah, because once it's in the context of this is supposed to scare you, then it's fuck, now it is gross.
And there's just that level of of separation between animation and live action.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to
animation is just more inherently fantastical than anything in live action, because you can enjoy the beauty of it and the artistry of it and still be that's still just animation. It doesn't look real.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody's getting dismembered in live action, you might intellectually know that, oh, that's just like rubber and fake blood and prosthetics, but it's still in live action.
Right.
There's still an attempt to make it look as authentic as you can make it.
Fucking Akira. Like, I thought that movie was beautiful. It was an amazing anime film, and like there's some real grotesque body horror in that. It like set the standard of body horror when it came out. Like,
it'd be like the grossest movie ever made if it was live action.
Yes, absolutely. But like, that didn't bother me nearly as bad as The Fly did, but the stuff that happens in Akira is arguably quite worse.
Oh, I would say much worse, really. Akira it's violent the whole way through, but not until that last act hits does it truly get like absolutely grotesque.
Yeah.
And if like, imagine like what happens in that movie happening in live action.
Oh God, no.
Oh my God.
I don't even know how.
My God.
It'd be CGI. There's no way to practical effect that. There's no way to practical effect. A literal mountain of flesh. Ugh.
Oh, you gave me an idea for a watch that we can have. Horror related.
What, a live action Akira? No.
It's in that same ballpark. Not nearly on the same scale. But think along the lines of I don't want to spoil it.
Save it for Tongue and Freak.
It's called Society. Oh.
Okay.
Yes. Like, I know the meme. We live in a society, but that's going to be a fun one to show you because there's hints of things throughout the whole movie, but it doesn't go off the rails until the end. Mm-hmm. And I'm dying to see how you react during the ending of that because it's bonkers.
Okay. I'm sure it will be fun.
Oh, also, how do you feel about at some point watching the goriest movie ever made?
I mean,
the status of it being quote unquote the goriest movie ever made is a little contested, but I'm safe giving it that label. But the kicker is it's ostensibly a comedy. It's a horror comedy, so the violence is so over the top and so cartoonish.
Okay.
So it'll gross you out, but it's not like dark and disturbing.
I mean,
it's just crazy over the top.
You're essentially in charge the whole month of October. I just kind of let you do whatever you want, and you can ask if I have a preference, but it's basically going to be me spinning a roulette wheel. So
see, it's hard because on one hand, I want to show you horror that I think you will enjoy on an actual intellectual artistic level.
Yeah, and then on the other end, you just want to torture me.
Yes, on the other end, I just want to gross you out and skeeve you out and torture you. So it's real hard finding that balance.
You sick bastard.
I always try to bring it into horror so I can just take over the conversation for a while.
Let's talk about some of our stinker apps, some real stinkers that we had down the line. And maybe people disagree. Maybe the few people who listen really love these episodes, but I've got a few that I've listened back to and I'm just like, oof. Yeah, that was a bad
one. Which ones?
Worst one for me is the Mass Effect episode, and you were absent for this one, so it's totally not on you. But, like, this was the first one where it's just me and Erica, and I don't think we'll be doing that format too often. There may be a few episodes where me and Erica talk about a topic that you're not interested in, but, like, I really hadn't established the sort of same conversation dynamics as I have with you. You're willing to give a little more pushback than Erica. Erica is so goddamn polite and nice and just willing to like listen, and she's such a good listener that she'll just let me steamroll the whole goddamn conversation. And it didn't help that she hadn't really played Mass Effect recently, and I had just come off of Mass Effect. So like I was high energy, like yeah, I want to talk about this and this and this and this, and she's just like yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I like that. And like she got like maybe a quarter of the words in that I got. So
I don't think it's as bad as you think it is. I didn't listen to the whole episode, not because I don't love you both, but because I've never played the games, so I'm just kind of like lost in the wheat fields with that.
Yeah.
But you do dominate the conversation, but I don't think it's quite as extensive as you beat yourself up over.
Yeah. That's just, I know that's my biggest like flaw in these conversations is that I will just fucking go and somebody's got to yank my chain to make me stop.
No, Isaac.
You are
no,
a lot
Isaac.
better about doing that than Erica is. You will jump in if you need to. But yeah, Mass Effect's the big stinker for me. Also just because I don't know what it is about me and Erica when we talk, but we end up just kind of gushing over characters instead of doing any more like deeper analysis of like the narrative and things like that. We just kind of like say, oh my gosh, we love this character, and then we just like gush about them for 20 minutes and then we'll move on to another one. So I don't know. Like Erica was getting that episode and she was clearly just like thrown off by how high energy I was in it. But yeah, I really don't like the Mass Effect episode looking back. And we barely talked about any gameplay. What I kind of am sad about here in Tongue and Geek is that I'm never really going to get the chance to talk about video games much, mostly because you and Erica don't play many, but also just because, like, game mechanics isn't really the core thing I want to talk about when I talk about video games. I'm really more into discussing them for their narrative potential, and I don't know. I know that like there's a lot to talk about in terms of video games because you're combining so many different elements of entertainment, and it's just too. I would need a separate podcast to talk about video games in depth because there's just so much to them.
I'd love to give you more of that for the pod, but
no,
yeah, it's like we said before. Like I'm one of the few people of my generation that just doesn't game much. My attention just can't stay with the game to finish it to accurately talk about it. So I think we can maybe find a workaround where we can maybe get some more games in here occasionally,
we'll
just
see.
to give you some of that.
I don't ever want to force it because, like, I always want whatever we talk about on the pod to be something we're both interested in that we both want to talk about. We've got a big long list in the production schedule of like things that we're planning to talk about, but I don't ever want it to get to a point where it's like, fuck, man, I've really got to do this one. Shit, I don't really care about this thing. And we've tossed out some stuff because one or both of us just aren't interested in it. Like, I think we had like, what was it, like Red Turtle or something way back, and like I think I had bought it digitally so that we could watch it, and we were both kind of like, do we really give a shit about talking about Red Turtle? And we're like, no, let's do something else.
Yeah, not because it's a bad movie or anything, just because the idea was to talk about some kind of under the radar animation. Like, let's do that.
Yeah.
But when it like came to like do it, we're like, what? Yeah, but there's no like kind of oomph behind it, you know?
Yeah.
So we just kind of threw it in the bin.
It's better for us to be sort of like talk about something everybody's talked about, and for us to be like genuinely invested in it, than for us to try and go out of our way and talk about something that's under the radar just for the sake of like being under the radar.
Yeah. So is the Mass Effect one your only real stinker in your opinion?
It's the worst. Looking back, I think our Dragon Ball Z Kai one I kind of have the similar problem where I steamrolled a lot, but I think that one is not nearly as bad because that one was also sort of colored by the fact that I have been into Dragon Ball for so much longer than you, and while I think that's a fun dynamic for a while, it gets to a point where, like, I have so many things to say about Dragon Ball, and you're like, I just watched this, and I haven't done, like, full-on character and narrative analysis yet, because, my god, I just watched it. Slow down.
I had fun with that one. One that I'm not happy with, and, it's weird because I feel like I should have been on top of my game with it, was our What We Do in the Shadows episode.
Yeah.
I had fun with it, and like we had just watched it together, Erica and I.
Yeah.
So I felt prepared, but for some reason when it came to do the episode, like I kind of just like I stumped myself for some reason. I couldn't find the groove to make the points as eruditely as I wanted to make. So I felt kind of just off kilter with that whole one. That
one was a very much a gush episode, and I think this kind of comes up whenever we talk about comedies, is that we have a little trouble sort of talking about comedies in a way that really adds anything to it. With the What We Do in the Shadows one,
it's funny or it's not funny.
Yeah, we usually just go like, oh my gosh, it's so funny, or we'll quote it a whole lot. Like the What We Do in the Shadows one, we were just quoting and referencing the whole show, and it's like, that's not, people could just watch it at that point.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, we need to work on our comedy analysis, because I don't want to get to the point where we're just explaining the joke. But, like, there's definitely something to analyzing comedy that we haven't really picked up on yet.
Yeah, I would agree. And also, and this is purely my ego speaking, Tokyo Godfathers.
Really?
I wanted to come in hot with that one and just, like, be like, I'm good at, like, analyzing the themes and symbolism of art. And, like, I think I just kind of floundered through it the whole time.
I don't think you floundered. I think we brought up some good points. There's a lot to talk about in Tokyo Godfathers, and I don't think we could ever... I mean, like, it would take a lot longer than the time we spent on it to touch on all of it. Like, it's a very deep film with a lot of different themes to analyze, and I'm proud of what we did.
It's very dense.
Yeah, I'm proud of what we did, because we touched on some elements of, like, transphobia, we touched on some elements of, homelessness, and some elements of spirituality and the idea of God. I think we did that one justice. It's a film that you definitely could spend a long time touching on every little narrative and thematic detail in.
Yeah, that's one of the few where I wish I really actually just kind of, like, did a lot of prep, so I can have my points, like, set and ready to go.
If anything, I think we did worse on Klaus. Klaus is one that I felt like we didn't really capture what made that movie so great. And I don't even know if I could do it now justice. This interpretation of the Santa mythos in a new, fun, and intriguing way. Like, I don't know if our discussion of it really brought anything new to the table other than just saying, yeah, Klaus is great. We love Klaus.
I think we did. It's funny how we're not even agreeing on our interpretation of the episode.
Everybody's got their own taste. We've got our own taste in our own conversations that we've had in the past.
I think we did pretty good with Klaus. And my whole philosophy, if you're gonna put your opinions about stuff like this out on the internet, like, I don't care about necessarily saying anything new about a thing. Like, my whole thing is I'm sick to death of just, like, people being negative about entertainment online, even though that's ironic because we're going to spend God knows how long shitting on Thor Ragnarok.
Well, it can be fun sometimes, but when it becomes your whole thing to just be negative, that's when it's shitty.
Yeah. So I like to consume positive analysis and be in a positive space with this shit because life is too short. I'm too old now to care about some fucking dweeb who's cynical about everything.
Yeah.
So I don't even know where I was going with this. Like, I just kind of started. What the fuck was my point?
You got pulled back into our toxic fandom. That's one of our hits.
I would say yes. Well, yeah. Okay. Let's take my brain fart into our favorite episodes.
Yeah, toxic fandom.
I would say the toxic fandom is one of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. We hit on so many different details. We get some great examples. You brought up some great stuff in, like, the Star Wars fandom and stuff. And then the DC fandom, like, we just were on a roll there with analyzing all of the different ways that fandom can get toxic and just hurt the way that we interact with these things. And we had some real fun outbursts too, because I got really pissed at some points. And I got like genuinely angry just having that conversation. Not at you, but just at the stuff we were talking about. And I got like there were some really funny outbursts from like both of us.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, how long is that episode? It's over 2 hours.
Yeah, it is.
And I could have kept going.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, I could have just kept going and going. Like, as much as I think that episode's good, I listened to it back not too long ago, and I'm just like, man, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I remembered to talk about this.
We could do another two parts to the Toxic Fandom episode, probably.
Yes, we could do Toxic Fandom Part 2.
Yeah. There's a lot of other stuff. I think it also set a good precedent of our sort of general topic discussions. And I'd like to do more episodes like that where we don't talk about a specific property, but we instead talk about a different element of fandom. I know Erica and I have plans for a fan fiction one down the line, but I would like to do...
That'll be fun.
I think it will be a fun one. But I really like this idea of just talking about not just the media we're consuming, but how the media's impacted us. Because the whole point of this is that this stuff matters to our everyday life. Like, all of this media we take in, it impacts the way we interact with each other, how we think, how we see the world. And talking about how those things impact us are just as important as talking about the things themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Which kind of brings me to an episode that we recorded that hasn't come out yet.
Mm-hmm. Is it for Tongue and Queer?
Yes, it's for Tongue and Queer.
Okay. I guess spoiler warning. This will come out on June 4th, which is the day that we first released our episode. But for Pride Month, we're doing Tongue and Queer, where we talk about some LGBTQ media so that we love. We only got 2 episodes this year just because of some scheduling conflicts. But the first one, which we've already recorded, is... I'll let Tyler take it away.
Well, I won't spoil the title, but what you said about things mattering... that was one of my favorite points. God, I hate filleting myself like that. It sounds so it sounds so arrogant.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of like an off the cuff thing that I just kind of like came into me that I voiced on the pod about how, like I grew up in a bigoted household, mm-hmm. and it was art, it was media, it was pop culture that rounded the edges off of some of that shit that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of got emotional making that point because like, I didn't plan on making that point. It just kind of popped in there. And like, I kind of just had like this moment where I was like, God, I love art, Like,
yeah.
I love art
Absolutely.
So much. And I love the way it could make me feel, whether it be happy or sad or frightened or disturbed. I love everything that art can do to a person who appreciates it.
Absolutely. And that's what I've loved about doing this pod, is because I didn't realize how much some of these things that we've watched and like read and everything meant to me until I sat down and started talking to you about them. Because like mm-hmm. a lot of times you just watch something and you'd be like, oh, that was good. And then you'd kind of just move on. But when you actually sit down and take the time to like parse out all the little things that's going on and how your mind's interpreting all of it, you start to get a better understanding of yourself too, and how the stuff you've seen before has impacted the way you see the world, and how the new stuff you're consuming is changing that perspective. Like, it's so cool to just have this sort of archive that we've created of like how we've developed as people. That's what I've really loved about the pod, is like I can go back and sort of see a pattern in shifting of how I perceive things since this last year. Yeah, that's a good point. I think the pod has definitely helped me in my writing. Yeah, which I didn't expect. Even though I have been just personally, just for my own amusement, writing, review and analysis of stuff for years. With the pod, it's allowed me to kind of like have a broader perspective that I wouldn't have had before. Mm-hmm. Just by listening to you, Yeah. And occasionally T2 and Erica. Aww. Yeah. I've broadened your horizons.
You've broadened my horizons. Not necessarily in a good way, but you've broadened my horizons.
I could say the same to you, you horror fuck.
Oh man, I like that title, Tyler the Horror Fuck.
Tyler the Horror Fuck.
That's a good one. I like that.
Tyler the Horror Fuck presents Tongue and Freak.
More favorite episodes. Okay, we talked about the toxic fandom one. I really love our Spider-Man Raimi trilogy episode.
That's a good one. I think that one actually... Well, that one's a weird one. It's one that we recorded last year, but we actually released this year. Because we recorded a bunch of stuff last year that we kind of kept on the back burner and then released later. So that one technically falls into the new stuff, but I'm totally willing... Fuck it, we're going to talk about it anyway. That's a good one. It's especially a good one for you. I feel like there are parts of it where I felt like I was a bit off and I wasn't quite making the point that I wanted to, or that I wasn't getting it across the way I wanted to. But like you were,
I don't get that at all. In what way?
I don't know. There was a few points where you're talking about what you really loved about like Spider-Man 2, and I'm trying to make some criticisms that I had noticed, and I'm not finding the words that I wanted to make. Like when I talked about how I didn't like Doc Ock as a villain as much as like Green Goblin, I just
okay, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, it definitely came across as you really understood what you liked about Doc Ock, and it came across for me more like I've got these smaller things that I don't like about Doc Ock, and they don't really seem to build up to anything meaningful. And I knew what I thought, I just didn't know how to convey it in the way I wanted to.
Okay.
But
I don't get that impression.
I agree that it was a very good one. It's just like this is a very bad way of thinking of it, but I kind of feel like if that were looked at as a debate, I kind of feel like I lost.
Debate lord, you fucking debate lord over here.
Like I like in the back of my head, I remember after like recording that one, I was like, "Fuck, he kind of like raked me over the coals on that one." I feel like I kind of fucking
wow. I'm so shocked that you feel that.
It wasn't on you. It was like you totally were not like dragging me or anything, but I just kind of felt like, man, I was not bringing my A game, and Tyler was on it.
That's very flattering because I feel like for the whole 2.5 hours or however long that is, that we have a really good push and pull the whole time. So I'm gonna put that notch in my belt.
Take that as a W.
Fuck yeah, notch. Yes, I'll take that as a W because I don't know if I've revealed this yet on the pod, but I am the recipient.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I am the recipient of a celebrity tweet like. One of my tweets was liked by one James Gunn on Twitter. I'm just gonna put that out there. I have made it.
You're such a little bitch. You get one celebrity to notice you. Senpai noticed you once, and suddenly you've got the biggest fucking britches. You're a size 86 pants.
Not just senpai. One of my favorite senpais noticed me.
So fucking funny.
It was probably it was a fleeting flick of his finger, gone in an instant. He just probably did it automatically, never to care again. But he fucking liked my tweet. And I am gonna wear that badge for the rest of my life.
Oh, that shall be a gem in your crown.
And let me to explain a little bit. I have perpetually avoided the Bird app my entire life because it's fucking Twitter.
It's the pits.
Everybody knows that Twitter is a cesspool.
Social media is the pits in general, but Twitter, yeah.
But quote unquote, my side gig is a little bit beneficial with having a Twitter account. So I have one now and I use it occasionally. And even though I've only been on it for a few months, I'm already kind of like, oh, fucking Twitter.
Yeah.
Even though I'm trying to cultivate it as much as I can.
Yeah.
So the fact that one of my favorite current filmmakers noticed senpai'd me, I was just like, oh my God. It's worth it. All of this is worth it.
It is pretty cool. I won't lie. It was pretty cool when you said it. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, I had to call everybody that would care and tell them that James Gunn liked one of my tweets.
This is something separate because I'm writing some fanfic right now. I guess I need to reveal. This is my great dark truth that I have to reveal from back in the Mass Effect episode. Back in the Mass Effect episode, I plugged a fanfic that I said was by a friend of the show. That was me. I was the friend of the show. And the reason I didn't want to say it at the time was that it's an erotic fanfic. It's got a full-blown sex scene in it. Yeah, I dropped that one a long time ago, but it's still online if you want to look at it. I didn't take it down. But I'm writing another fanfic right now about Persona 5, and there's this really interesting line to walk with creating stuff online because it can be so validating to get positive feedback on the stuff you make, but it can also just get so addicting. And then when you lose that validation, or when it stops coming in as fast as it used to, you get like withdrawals. It's bad. I'm kind of happy that the pod has been limited to like our close friends as an audience, because if we had suddenly picked up and like, oh my god, we got big real quick, we would have immediately been tossed into this hole oh, fuck, now we've got to be good at everything all the time, and we've got to keep up these numbers and everything. But having done this for, like, a year now, and then sort of gradually moved into, like, smaller areas of internet fame in other areas, I have a little more wariness about it. But, like,
yeah,
it can be so addicting to get that internet validation from strangers, because I've gotten lots of good comments and feedback and everything. I've gotten, like, I think 13, maybe 14,000 hits on this Persona fanfic I've been writing now, which is
that's fucking cool, though.
It's
like,
really cool that tons and tons of people have come and, like, I've read this story that I'm writing, and they enjoy it, and they love the way I've interpreted the characters and everything. That's awesome. That's so validating. It's such a positive element of fandom. But there's also just this element that's like, you gotta be careful with it, because once you start getting that validation from people, it hooks you, because now it's like, oh man, I've got to keep getting that validation. Why aren't they giving that same validation that I used to have? Well, like, I need it, and it's bad.
It's genuinely kind of scary.
It is.
Because
fame's addicting.
Yeah, as cool as it was to have James Gunn like my tweet, like, that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a guy liked my tweet.
Yeah.
Who cares? He just so happens to be a popular filmmaker. But, like, for a split second, I'm not too ashamed to admit, I'm like, oh man, like, I wonder if I can get some more of this. Like, yeah. I wonder how I can get more celebrity attention to my profile. And I'm like, I had to stop myself. I'm like, oh, do not think that because fuck you for even thinking that. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Just because somebody likes your tweet. Stop it, you idiot. Who cares?
There is
like, relax.
I think there's just a level of ego in any creative endeavor that you just have it in your mind that the thing you have to show the world is worth other people's attention. There's a certain level of, like, look at me to any creative endeavor. It's always some level of performance, even on, like, even with this pod where it's largely just you and me sitting talking back and forth, we're half joking when we're like, man, we've only got like 4 people who follow us, haha. And then other times we're like, damn it, why can't we get more people to follow us? Like, yep. it's really just a half joke. And, like, that is scary that we both crave that sort of validation from a lot of online strangers. But I don't know, it can be very rewarding too. You've got to be careful with it, but it can also, if you treat it right and you're careful with it, it can be very uplifting. I've more creatively fulfilled having started this podcast than I've been in years and years of, like, being in college and, like, doing a bunch of writing that was all, like, analytical analysis and just reading texts and stuff like that, and, you know, parsing out those kind of things. That really sucked a lot of creativity out for me. Like, there was a creative element to them, but it was all structured in a way that, like, I have to meet these standards, and I have to meet these page limits, and I have to do this and this and this. Like, it sucked all the joy out of it for me. And since we started this podcast, and also on the side of that, I've started writing fanfic, there's this new creative fulfillment in me where it's like, I can just make things that I enjoy or talk about things that I enjoy in a way that people will enjoy, and I'm spreading a little joy. That's awesome. Like, that's such a good feeling that something I do brings other people happiness.
Yeah, it is totally awesome. And it's awesome that, like, you're getting such fulfillment out of it, because on the flip side of my James Gunn tweet, I freelance for a big horror website. Why would I? My name's on the byline, so it doesn't matter to keeping it secret. Bloody Disgusting. I freelance for Bloody Disgusting, and I have a decent amount of work published there now. And, like, seeing my name on a website that I've been reading for years, it's kind of surreal, and it still hasn't really sunk in yet. Yeah,
you had a big blow up on Reddit on one of your articles, didn't you?
Yeah, I was getting to that. One of the articles I wrote was shared on Reddit just to dread it, the horror sub, and, like, it got, like, I can't remember, like 700 or more upvotes, and I'm like, that was the first time that I, like, was kind of outside of myself. I'm like, people are in good numbers reading words that I wrote, and like, there wasn't like, I didn't feel like, hell yeah. And like, it didn't scare me. It made me happy, like happy in a very even keeled way. I'm like, wow, like something that I've loved doing just as a hobby for most of my adult life is being spread to people who like are enjoying it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's fucking cool.
I can't even picture.
I can't believe it.
I can't even picture a room of 700 people. You know?
Yeah.
It's like hard to think. Like you couldn't fit 700 people in my house. Like if there were 700 people in my house, we would be like crammed to the walls. Like that's insane to think that many people saw something that you created and were like, hell yeah, I like this guy. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any numbers about what kind of views my articles get. I don't care. Mm-hmm. But like, I know it's a heavily trafficked site for the content that it is. Mm-hmm. Before, I think, just with how my anxiety works, the idea of all kinds of strangers' eyes on things that I'm writing would scare the shit out of me. But now, like, that I've been in the thick of it, I'm just like, what you're doing actually has merit to it. If somebody said, okay, you can do this for us and we will publish it with our brand attached to it, you know, that's like, oh my God, like, I'm worthy?
Yeah.
I'm worthy?
I can wield Mjolnir. I'm worthy.
I can't believe I'm worthy. And like, I'm still, every time it comes, like, I'm still like, I still struggle with writer's block, and I still struggle with like, this is a piece of shit. I can't believe I just wasted my time writing all this garbage.
Yeah.
But then like, it gets published and all that fades away. I'm like, I did it. Like it's good enough for them to put it under their banner. Then it's good enough for you, Tyler, to have written it, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I'm so happy and proud of us. We've done a lot over this past year to grow as people and grow as creators. We've done a lot of good this year.
Yeah, it does a lot for the mental health to take a step back and let some humbleness settle over you and some gratefulness to settle over you, because it's really fucking hard sometimes. Like, not to get too heavy, but like for the past 2.5 years, like shit has not been okay.
Shit's been bad. Shit's been bad for everybody.
Shit has not been okay for anybody. And there's just this overarching sense of just like nobody is fine. Individually, people might be doing okay, like, you know, like it could be worse, but everybody mentally is just not doing okay. And it's for me personally, it's hard not to get stuck in that mindset of like, God, like the world is on fire and there's nothing I can do to escape it. There's nothing I can do to help it. Like everything's scary. I don't know what to do. And to try and take a step back and be like, okay, like, but you're doing this and you're doing this and it's working out, really helps. It's a process, and like it's not perfect. I'm not good at doing that a lot of the time.
Yeah,
but when I do, it really helps.
It feels selfish at times to feel grateful for things.
Yeah.
When like everything around us seems to be so bad, but just like that's just how humans are. Like we can't always be looking at the grand scale. We'll go mad trying to look at the big picture all the time. We can't do it. We shouldn't ignore it by any means, but we've got to contextualize it with like the smaller elements of our day-to-day lives that form who we are. Because if you get caught up in staring at that enormous void standing over you, like,
oh God, and I stare at it a lot.
You'll go mad. You'll go mad doing that. You have to take the time to look down at the small details that make your life. And there's a lot of small details in my life that I'm very happy with right now. Like, there's a lot of stuff I'd like to see changed, and there's certainly a lot of things that I'm worried about for the future and even the present, but, like, you have to take the time to look at the good things going on in your life and say, it's not as bad as I make it out to be. It is bad. I shouldn't ignore the bad, but there's also good here too.
Yeah. Yeah. Intellectually, I understand that completely.
And it's hard.
The struggle is to actually enact on it, because with that, there comes guilt.
Yeah.
There comes guilt, oh, man. Like, I do not want this to get too heavy, but it's just, whew. I can make this a therapy session if I wanted to, but I won't.
It's a challenge, but I'm very proud of both of us over this past year. We have done a lot. Fuck, this got heavy, and I don't know if we're even talking about the podcast anymore. We're not even talking about the podcast anymore. Jesus Christ. Fuck.
Okay, so the Spider-Man pod with the Raimi trilogy, the Toxic Fandom.
Here's a segue. Another great episode, and it ties into the fact that we just went on a wild tangent there. The Nightmare Before Christmas episode is one of my favorites, because that one is nothing but tangents. Like, we go into, like, Erica looked up the plot synopsis of that YA book that's coming out in July, and then we talked about, like, our fan fiction of, like, what we would make in a, like, Nightmare Before Christmas sequel. And, like, we
oh, yeah, I forgot all of that. That's one of the ones I didn't really listen back on.
Yeah, we theorized about, like, all the different worlds that we never got to see. Like, that one is half review of Nightmare Before Christmas and half just fan cast of, like, if I was in charge of Nightmare Before Christmas, here's my fanfic for what Nightmare Before Christmas would be. And it's so fun. There's just a good energy to it, and I really enjoy that one.
And then that's the fun of loving this shit, is that you can just have fun just talking out of your ass about it for how many hours.
Yeah.
That's what blows my mind about people who are actually filmmakers for a living. Like, think about that for a second. There are people that love movies and stories enough that is their life, is telling stories on film. Like, that's awesome. A level of love and obsession that, like, blows my mind.
Yeah.
It absolutely blows my mind. Like, people that dedicate their lives, years of their lives, to telling one story, from writing the script to filming it to editing it to promoting it to releasing it. That's years of somebody's life on one story.
Yeah.
You have to really, really, really fucking love a thing to dedicate that much time to it. That's what's magic about it. That's what's magic about fiction, be it film or prose or television or video games. Like, that's the magic of it.
Yeah. There's just this creative need to have something inside of you given out into the world. Like, I had this idea in my mind and I've shaped it into something, and now I have to give it to everyone else. It's just an awesome experience.
Oh, man.
What else?
This has been fun.
This has been fun. This has been sort of therapeutic and fun. It's gone some weird places, but I kind of expected that. Very unstructured retrospective episode. Any other episodes you want to talk about, or anything else?
I want to keep going. Like, I'm not done yet. I want to keep going, but I don't know what to go with.
What the next big thing to hit? How was it talking about Gremlins? That's like one of your favorite properties.
Yes, Gremlins is like the thing I hold dearest to my heart. It was I was so excited. I love doing it. Mm-hmm. But, like, at the same time, like, I don't think there could have been an outcome with that episode that I would have been satisfied with.
It's a great
because
it's a good app.
It's a good. I think I could separate myself from it enough to acknowledge it as a good episode. But I think I said it in the episode itself. Like, it's been such a part of me my entire life.
Yeah.
Like, I love it so much. It cancels itself out because I don't know how to talk about it because it's so intrinsic to who I am.
Yeah, there's a point where you're so connected to something that words can never do it justice. Like, it's baked into your way of life that, like, even trying to go in and analyze how you feel about it's near impossible because your worldview has already been so deeply shaped by it.
Yeah. And that just speaks to the beauty of how art affects people. Because I think my opener was like, Isaac, is there a thing that, like, is there a piece of art that has been with you your whole life? And I think you said Pokemon.
Yeah. which I would not compare my love of Pokemon to your love of Gremlins.
My love of Gremlins.
Because I love Pokemon, I do, but I'm a lot more willing to like analyze. First off, there's a lot more Pokemon than there is Gremlins, so I've also had like
lucky bastards.
Well, lucky in the sense that yeah, I have more of it, but also unlucky in the sense that I've gotten to see how it's changed, or in some ways not changed when it needed to, and I have more to criticize of Pokemon because it's been around in my life for a longer period, whereas you have that one beautiful moment that you can look back on with Gremlins and like revisit and reinterpret, and you have that crystallized for you, whereas I have to watch them keep pumping out Pokemon games with shitty ass graphics and not changing anything in the goddamn formula. Okay, no, Arceus was good. Pokemon Legends Arceus was good. I have some hopes for the new one, but like, fuck. There was a long period there where every goddamn Pokemon game was exactly the same, and they were cheaping out on visuals. And total tangent.
So it's almost in a way kind of a blessing that I haven't been inundated with Gremlins stuff over the past 40 years.
Like, think about if Gremlins was the same way Marvel is now. Like, the burnout we have on Marvel. Imagine, like, 15 years worth of Gremlin property coming out, and how burnt out you'd be after all that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, as absolutely desperately as I need a Gremlins 3 in some capacity to happen in my life.
You're getting a TV show?
I'm getting a TV show, and like I'm stuck in this weird place where I'm like, I'm very open to what it could be. Like, I know for a fact it's probably not going to be what I imagine it to be or what I expected or even want it to be. But like, I'm so goddamn thirsty for new Gremlins material that in a way, like, I have like the most open mind about it as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Which, God, I wish more fandom was like that. Like, I wish more fandom was just open to the new ideas that something can have and can be.
Do fanfic. I'm telling you, it's been so useful to have like an outlet where I can look at my fandom and be like, man, I really want more of this thing. They haven't released more yet, or maybe they haven't touched on something in it that I think I'd like them to. Maybe I should do it. And then once you put it out there and other people start latching onto it and they're like, oh yeah, that's awesome. I love this. It's like so... It changes the way you interact with a property. And I've had a similar experience with cosplay because I do some cosplay. And like, there are characters that I've cosplayed that I like, but I'm not deeply attached to. But then the act of cosplaying them, as like putting on the image of them and performing as them, has made me more attached to them based on the reactions I get from others. Because suddenly it's like, I'm not just, interacting with this one piece of media. I'm adding to it. I'm, presenting myself as it, and people are loving it, and it makes it all that more important to you.
Yeah, cosplay is fucking wild.
It is. It's
because when we went as the Scooby Gang that year,
yes,
like I was just in a green shirt and brown pants, and the amount of attention we got was exhausting. And like, I was just in a green shirt and brown pants, but like everybody else, all the rest of you had put much more effort into your costumes. But like, we were stopped on the con floor like every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was like amazing. It was like exhilarating, but also exhausting. And like, I can't imagine what it's like for these people who put so much effort and talent into their cosplays to go to these cons, because they must be completely bombarded with people the entire time. Like, how do you have the energy for that? Holy shit.
Yeah.
It's
just so wild how engaging with fandom in these ways, it makes the love that we have for these properties like exponentially more powerful. Like, the moment that you take on the identity of a character, it's like, oh shit, now I'm putting myself in their shoes, and people are actually responding to it as if it's real. and it's fucking wild what that's doing to my brain.
It is really, really wild because we all had that moment. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I like My Hero Academia, but like I did not realize how much I loved All Might as a character until I started cosplaying as All Might, and people started treating me like All Might at cons and stopping me for pictures as All Might, and I'm like, holy shit, I love this character so much because I have briefly embodied them.
Yeah. It's nuts. Like, I didn't realize how much I loved the Scooby-Doo franchise until we cosplayed. Like, I'm not going to pretend like I'm some like absolute expert on all things Scooby-Doo.
Right.
But it's one of those franchises that has just kind of stuck around with me my entire life. Like every once in a blue moon, I'll just be like, you know what? I kind of want to watch some Scooby-Doo. And every time I do, I'm in a happy mood. I'm in a happy place. It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And when we went as the Scooby Gang that one year, like this moment is just going to stay with me for the rest of my life, even though it's such a simple moment. But this little girl comes up to us.
Yes!
Couldn't have been more than 3. Couldn't have been more than 3, with her mom.
Uh-huh.
And she just wanted to say hi and hug us all because she loves Scooby-Doo. And I was just like, all of us, we were like, oh my God. Just that right there is an encapsulation of just how much affection and power these characters have over people.
I got a very similar one when I was dressed as Mario for the first time. And, like, I had a little girl who I think was dressed as Princess Peach, if I'm remembering correctly. She handed me, like, a superstar that her mother had, like, cut out from, like, the Mario, like, the Invincibility star. And I was just like, thank you, sweet, precious child.
It's so magical. Like,
we've got to do an opposite.
Like, that little girl, that didn't little girl see 4 people dressed up as Fred, Velma, Daphne, and Shaggy.
She saw the Scooby Gang.
She saw Fred, Velma, Daphne, and Shaggy, and she wanted to say hi and give us a hug. And it was just like, my God.
We've got to do like a full positive fandom episode to sort of like counterbalance our toxic fandom episode, because there's so much good to talk about in fandom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For sure. And a lot of it can be found at cons, even though cons also have their dark side, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still like that kind of like
there's a filter
place, area, that time where you can all just be.
And there's also
accepted.
Just a filtering of it because assholes are less encouraged to be assholes when they're in person.
Yeah.
There are still some bold assholes out there, but less of them have the balls to do anything because fuck them. They're cowards that hide behind screens most of the time.
Yeah, and that's as terrible as internet toxicity can be. I went off on an hour-long tangent about the Star Wars fandom and our toxic fandom episode. Mm-hmm. But I love Star Wars. I love the sequel trilogy. I know you don't. But like the internet would have you believe that like everybody hates it. It's trash. It's garbage. It's worthless. Disney ruined it. But every fucking con I've been to since 2015... I see a bunch of Reys. I see a bunch of Kylo Rens. I see a bunch of old Lukes. And it's like, it's a reminder that like, no, these people that are so vicious and hateful online, they're not the representatives.
They're not everybody.
They're not everybody, And so like when I see a Rey Skywalker, because yes, that's her fucking name, get used to it, fandom. When I see a Rey Skywalker out in a con, I'm like, yes, you know what? Like, the sequel trilogy has made its impact, and the people who want to tear it down and be hateful and bigoted and racist and sexist, they're not going to win, even though they're really fucking loud.
We have gone. Well, we weren't sure how long this episode was going to go, and we're already at an hour and a half.
Yeah, it has flew by.
Yeah,
I did not know what to expect from this episode at all. But we just kind of fell right into it.
It's a good one. It's a testament to how far we've come in this podcast. Early on, telling us to just sit down and record for an hour and a half with little prep or any like structure or even a topic to talk about, we'd have bumbled our way through that. But now we can actually just sit down and touch on all kinds of different points that we want to talk about.
Yeah, we've gotten better at just having conversations evolve and change topics.
Yeah, I've loved doing this pod, man.
Yeah, it's I still can't believe it's been a year. It feels like it's been a year, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's been a year.
It's technically been longer. We were started recording, I think, back in, I want to say late April, early May. We recorded a few episodes.
Right, I think Godzilla vs. Kong came out in March.
Yeah,
of 2021.
We recorded for a while, and we got a few episodes before we actually put anything out, and then we first put something out on YouTube on June 4th. Before we started posting, and then there was a long period where we didn't post anything on anything else but YouTube, and now we post on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and yada yada yada. But yeah, we've come a long way in 1 year, and I'm interested to see how far we go in the days to come.
Same, because of our fucking schedule, there's no sign of stopping anywhere in the near future. So, okay. I know one thing. Two more things before we wrap it up. What do you look forward to most in the coming year in the pod first, and then I'll save the second one until after we're done wrapping this one up.
I've really enjoyed our themes, like our monthly themes that we do. We've got Tongue and Queer coming up, and I think the one that we've recorded so far is really good. I think the second one that we've got lined up is also going to be really good. I've got high hopes for it. I've really enjoyed having more guests on. I love just talking with you, but I've also really enjoyed getting some other outside perspectives. Erica, of course, she's always fun to have on, but T2 was a great addition. I think both episodes that we've done with him were really fun. We've got another one for Tongue and Queer coming on. I won't spoil that, but I think she's going to bring some really cool stuff to the table. So yeah, there's just a lot to look forward to. I think excited for Tongue and Freak and Tongue and Cheer again. I think both of them are going to be fun. I've got some fun stuff planned for Tongue and Cheer. I don't know what Tyler's got on the docket for Tongue and Freak yet, but I'm sure somebody will enjoy it.
I'm agonizing over what to do, and it's still a ways out. So to be determined.
I won't say what it is, but we've got a big something planned very soon in the July. So keep your eye on it. I'm pretty sure
it's what you've been hinting at forever.
You know what? No. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. They're mysterious.
Okay. Well, what I'm looking forward to is just keep doing it, just seeing how we keep going.
Yeah.
Really nothing deeper than that. Second question, and I guess this is what we can end on, is it horny?
Is it horny? Oh God, yes, absolutely. Tongue and Geek is so horny. Like at least 10 to 15 minutes of each episode is dedicated to us just making some kind of sexual jokes about the properties we talk about. I'm dooming at least.
Yeah, I don't have any concrete metrics about how horny I think our podcast is, but I think it's relatively horny.
I think it's pretty horny.
Some episodes more than others. Our Masters of the Universe Revelations episode is pretty horny because you were thirsting for everybody in that show. Oh my God,
it was exactly what I wanted. So much muscle. All that
buff dudes, buff chicks, just intermingling.
Love that one. Yeah, brief talk about, I guess, is some of the segments that we've done throughout the pod. I really love our specialized segments that we've done. Review's been with us since the beginning. I have some times where I struggle with it now because a lot of reviews online, early on it was fun because it's like, haha, look at this stupid shit that these people said online, and then I kind of started feeling bad about that. It's like, who am I to make fun of these people's opinions? I'm putting my stupid ass opinion out on the internet, such a hypocrite.
Yeah, I've had that crisis pretty much every time we've done review.
And then sometimes the reviews that we have will just be they won't really spark anything, or they may be just straight up homophobic or racist or misogynist bullshit, and it's there's nothing funny here. It's just more garbage out on the internet. So that's why I've been kind of changing up the review formula in their past few episodes. I really like the one that I'm doing now with the what's it called, that website that basically tells you how appropriate things are.
Common Sense Media.
Common Sense Media, yes. I like that one because it really is a lot more fun for us to pick apart like their standards of what's appropriate and what's not. So review is one that's, I don't see it going anytime soon, but the way we do it may be sort of shifting. It may not be the same way that it used to be. Is It Horny, which you introduced this year? It's funny. Like I feel like it was already so caked into what we talk about, because we kind of just talk about how horny the shows were anyway, or how horny we were for them, and now we've just explicitly made a segment of like, is it horny?
It kind of took us a while to get a little bit more comfortable with our, adult humor, but once we settle into it a bit more,
yeah. Other segments, Nerd Ethics, which kind of comes and goes. Nerd Ethics is also one that's kind of just like baked into what we talk about, because we do so much thematic analysis and narrative analysis that like touches on questions of ethics that like we don't always need an explicit question to look at. We've had some funny ones though. I really like the conversation we had in Space Jam 2 about whether or not the Warnerverse is like some kind of hell dimension where everybody has no free will and they're like trapped.
I mean, God, it feels that way in that goddamn movie.
Oh boy. What other segments have we done? I feel like there's others.
I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. The review, Is It Horny, and Nerd Ethics have pretty much been the top three.
I'd like to start like bringing in some like maybe once every now and then segments, just something to mix up the formula, because I don't know, we don't really have as strict a formula as we had in earlier episodes, but I do sort of feel like maybe we could switch out Nerd Ethics every now, or not Nerd Ethics, but review for something else when like there's no good reviews to look at or stuff like that. Just things to sort of mix up the way that we talk about these things, because as fun as it is to talk about them, I do feel like there are times when we'll sit down, record an episode, and I'll be done with it, and I'm going to be like, that one was kind of just standard. That was like a standard ep for us.
Yeah.
Our real standout ones are ones where we start breaking the formula that we set for ourselves.
Yeah. I think most of our best ones are the ones where we go off on crazy tangents.
Yeah.
And then we always say, oh man, we went off on a tangent.
That's the best
they're
stuff.
always the most entertaining.
They really are.
So, at least for me.
Yeah. Well.
Oh boy.
Let's rate the damn thing and be done with it. What would you give Tongue and Geek Season 1 or Year 1?
I would give Tongue and Geek Year 1 2 more white guys on the internet giving their unsolicited opinions on all things geeky.
Excellent. Out of what, though? Out of the millions of white guys on the internet already giving their opinions on all things geeky. I don't know. That was a good one. I don't really have a... I'm going to pull a classic Tyler move and refuse to rate. Not because I have any objection to rating, but I'm not able to think of anything funny. Any funny, stupid metric for rating.
Yeah, if you have to sit there and think about trying to be funny, it's not going to work.
It's not.
So
it's not.
Better to just take the knee on that.
Yeah. Oh, something... I love that we finally finalized... like an outro too, because like we fumbled for so long with the outro. we went through we had Don't Tell My Mom for a while, which was pretty good, and then like that got spoiled and we fumbled around. You had your little song that you made up that changed every single time we did it. And then finally with Tokyo Godfathers, Don't Throw Your Baby in the Trash.
Your baby in the trash.
I love that one. It's nonsensical, but it gives good advice. It's perfect.
Yeah, don't
do it.
Don't throw your baby in the trash, under most circumstances at least.
Oh, boy. I guess that's going to do it for us.
I guess.
If you all enjoyed this episode, be sure to like us on YouTube or rate us on whatever platform you're listening on. Drop a comment, share us with your friends, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Tongue and Geek. That's at Tongue and Geek, all one word. Thank you. Oh, also, I guess if we wanted to, I'll plug my fanfic if you want to plug your articles that you write. You said yours was on, what was the website called again? Bloody Disgusting?
You don't know the website?
Bloody Disgusting?
Yes, bloodydisgusting.com.
I don't frequent the website. I don't frequent the horror website. I only look at the articles whenever I see you post them, and I'm like, I'll go straight here. And then I'll get out as fast as I can. I'll plug... If you want to read my fanfic, like I said, that Mass Effect fanfic, Mass Affection, from way back in our pod, it's been dropped. It's canceled. There's no more to it, but there's some saucy stuff in there. Definitely adult only.
Pretty saucy. Pretty surprisingly saucy.
Yeah.
For how much of a good boy Isaac is. He got pretty filthy.
Is it horny? Yes, absolutely. Adult
so
only.
Fucking horny.
Adult only. I had a lot of...
Uncomfortably horny at times.
That is on there. Oh, it's under Fantastic Fanatic. That is my handle on Archive of Our Own. And the Persona 5 fanfic, which I'm writing, and it is still going, it's definitely going to get finished. Because, my God, it's at 118,000 words now. Tyler, I've written 118,000 words on a fanfiction I started last year. What the fuck? That's longer than most...
Tolstoy, fucking slow down.
It's longer than most novels. I'm getting straight up into, like, an epic at this point. Oh, God. But, yeah, it's called Persona 5 Years Later. If you're a fan of Persona 5, it's a future fic, set, obviously, 5 years after the events of the main game. Combines some elements from Persona 5 Royal and Persona 5 Strikers. If you want to check that out, I'm very proud of it. I think it's doing very well. I'm really excited to wrap it up here in the coming weeks or months. God, who knows? But that is all under Fantastic Fanatic on Archive of Our Own, if you want to check out any of that. That's it for Tongue and Geek, though. Thank you for joining us here for a whole year. And please stick with us in the years or year or however much longer we decide to do this.
However much long this fucking rock spins.
To come. And always, always remember... Don't throw your baby in the trash.
In the trash.
In the trash.